Now, let's get straight to the heart of the matter, because we've got George Monbiot waiting to come on to talk to us about something he's been tweeting about quite vociferously this morning, and that is his view that the climate change problem now is so severe that it has to be dealt with not just by people giving up stuff like plastic bags and diesel, but there has to be some kind of political machine and political movement begun anew to make us all kind of, buckle under and do the right thing. Because this latest warning is coming from the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They say urgent and unprecedented changes are needed to reach a new target, which should be a maximum of 1.5 degrees centigrade in terms of the amount the planet should be allowed to heat up by, to lessen the risks of drought, floods, extreme heat and poverty for hundreds of millions of people. George, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Morning, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. You're quite specific in your tweeting this morning about why you believe that what has been done up to now is not good enough. Forgive me for being slightly suspicious of this intergovernmental panel, but my problem with them is that they don't do their own research. They just kind of collate other people's research, which in the past has led to them being criticised for all sorts of reasons. Now, I know that they've got a reason for raising this problem and making us discuss it, and I'm very happy to discuss it, but can we get to the truth rather than the propaganda?
Well, offset, collating other people's research is exactly what they're there to do, but the people who are collating it are themselves scientists and researchers who have done a lot of the research themselves.
So they're collating their own research then?
Well, and that of thousands of other researchers across thousands of papers. This is trying to get the best overview they possibly can of the state of the science, and that means a huge amount of reading, a huge amount of reviewing, a huge amount of collating to come up with a summary of what's going on.
Sure. But of course the difficulty with all of that, and it's been pointed out many times I'm sure to you in the past, is that because they've got so much stuff to look at and it moves so quickly, the thinking and the science on climate change, that they can't always be as up to date perhaps as they ought to be.
Well, that's certainly true, and that's true of all science, of course. It's a constant scramble to catch up and to know what the latest data is saying, and there's no difference here. But unfortunately, in this case, events are overtaking us. So, even as we say, right, our understanding of things is this, woof, we've got a whole load of forest fires, wildfires, of heat waves, of Arctic ice melting, which means, oh my gosh, we've got to revise our understanding. We've got to study what's happening now, and what we keep finding is that events are going beyond what the scientists have been predicting. It's been happening faster, it's been going further. Years ago, people like myself were called scaremongers. We were told, all this stuff about the Arctic ice melting, about wildfires, about heat waves, you're just trying to scare us. And we were talking about this stuff happening by 2050.
Well, I mean, one of the things that the panel has said might happen is that Himalayan ice caps or Himalayan glaciers will melt by 2035, which I think they've now sort of pulled back on slightly. I mean, the difficulty is here, George.
Upset, Mike. They acknowledge that was a fundamental mistake caused by a transcription error. They actually, a figure got mangled while being moved from one place to another, and they ended up with, yes, it was a nonsensical claim.
Yeah, but the problem with things like...
They immediately owned that and recognised that and said, obviously, we got this wrong.
No, of course, but the problem with that, George, is that people then have a slightly less trusting kind of take on what it is that they come out with in the future. And also, when you say things like, we need to sort of accelerate the pace at which we change our own lifestyles, I mean, I would imagine I'm not the only one who lives in Britain who thinks that we've already quite accelerated the change in our lifestyles, in as much as even 10 years ago, we didn't have the kind of environmental laws in place that we have now. We had far more emissions going on. We had no bike lanes anywhere. We had loads of plastic bags being given to us free in supermarkets. We have changed quite a lot of things over the course of time. It doesn't feel to me like we're not doing enough.
Well, the question is, are we doing enough to actually prevent this existential crisis that we're now faced with? And the science is very clear. The maximum we can afford to heat the planet is 1.5 degrees centigrade. We've already gone beyond 1 degree. This requires massive and urgent action, which goes way beyond the pathetic measures we've taken so far.
Well, you say that you call them pathetic. But you call them pathetic. I mean, London is now at pretty much a standstill because of the bike lanes that have been put into this city.
No,
right?
London's at a standstill because too many people are driving cars into it.
Well, people drive cars into London for a reason. The train systems are no use. The trains are on strike. You can't get on the train.
That needs to be addressed. We need much better public transport.
Yeah, well, we need also fewer cycle lanes.
No, offset. obviously everyone on a bicycle is reducing the space being taken up on the roads. You know, if you can travel...
Doesn't feel like that.
On a vehicle... right. If you can travel on a vehicle you can lift with one hand rather than inside a ton of metal and get there faster, because generally bicycles are much faster crossing cities than cars are, you are actually reducing the amount of space required for someone to move through the city.
But George, I think you and Mike would probably both agree that no matter how many bikes were introduced and no matter how many cars were taken off London streets, that would not make any difference at all to the size of the crisis that you are talking about. So what are the answers?
Right. It would make a small difference, but the bigger difference is, number one, we must leave fossil fuels in the ground. That is the most fundamental thing. Stop digging them up, stop burning them. And that requires a total energy transition, moving out of the old-fashioned dinosaur forms of energy, the fossil fuels, into the new forms of energy, renewables, and all the rest. But it also means saying there are planetary limits, and we've got to live within those limits. They've been quite well described by scientists now. They call them the planetary boundaries. And rather than pursuing endless growth, we should pursue well-being. That should be our aim.
But again, isn't there a massive divide here between the developing world and their use of fossil fuels and the developed world and our use of fossil fuels?
Yeah, we use far more. And
but ours is going down and theirs is going up.
Yeah, but nothing is going to change if the rich nations, which have already enjoyed this great fossil fuel bounty, don't demonstrate that they're going to make the massive transition which is required. And other countries, if they don't do that, other countries are going to say, well, why the hell should we do anything if you guys, having profited so much from polluting the planet and burning the fossil fuel reserves, aren't even going to make the drastic changes yourselves?
But one of the problems, for example, of the developing nations becoming more developed is there's a great example in India where many more people are now in a position to buy air conditioning machines because it's very, very hot in India, and where they couldn't buy them before, they didn't have enough money. Now they can, and they're creating massive pollution as a result of that. But would you call that more modernising of the economy and a kind of a dragging up from, you know, poverty into being middle class, or would you call that dangerous?
Well, I call it both.
Well, yeah, but you can't do that, you see. There's no sitting on the fence on this show, George.
No, it's not sitting on the fence. I mean, you know, the radical position is saying, look, we have to pursue well-being. We have to make sure that people's needs are met without cooking the planet, without destroying the conditions which allow human beings to sustain their lives, without ensuring that our children have got nothing to look forward to, without trashing the planet for all the other species that share it with us. We have to find ways of making sure that, you know, we do have well-being, that we have enough to feed ourselves, that we have good houses, that we have our basic needs met without succumbing to greed, the greed that actually pushes us over the brink and makes it impossible to have even our basic needs met.
But that's where we have the quandary, isn't it, in a way? Because in some parts of the world, you know, they are absolutely going full speed ahead, like in China, building power stations, coal-fired or otherwise. They're still looking for oil and gas. They're still exploring parts of the world where they can, basically sort of exploit their mineral wealth and all of that. And whereas we are being told constantly, all the time, that even though we are making quite a lot of sacrifices in this country, we're paying a green tax to all of the energy companies, we're finding it much more difficult to drive diesel cars, we're finding it much more difficult to be able to build the kinds of power stations that they're doing in China. We can't build any more airports. You know, we're suffering here, and everybody else is having a great time.
Well, I don't think we're suffering much from not having coal pollution, number one. But number two, this they-we thing...
Well, now being told we can't burn wood either.
Whoa. This they-we thing is completely misleading, because where are we getting our manufactured products from? From China. And if you look at the emissions which we sort of dump overseas and say, oh, that's China's fault, that's China causing those, but the ones that we're commissioning through the things that we buy, it's over 50% of all the greenhouse gases that we cause is caused by the stuff we buy from other countries. And so you can't just divide it up and say, oh, it's the Chinese doing this. We are intimately involved with what the Chinese are doing.
Yeah, but the Chinese economy is being built on those sales. I mean, are you saying that the Chinese should not become a modern economy?
Absolutely, they become a modern economy, but a modern economy is not a coal-fired economy. That's an 18th century technology.
Well, tell them that then.
Number one, we do, and number two, they actually tend to be a lot more receptive to that than most people in this country are. It's quite amazing, the transition that's taking place in China. Sure, there's still a lot of bad stuff going on, but they are moving towards like an electrified mass transit system, for example, so much faster than we are. In some ways,
that's because they can build things much faster than we can, George, as you well know, because they use slave labour, they mistreat their workers, and they are completely and utterly oblivious to shooting people in the head if they don't like what they think.
Do you think I'm endorsing any of that? Of course,
well, I don't know, but I mean, there's a reason why they can build things a lot quicker than us.
Yeah, no. Well, listen, no, we are perfectly capable of doing that. When the US entered the Second World War, right, it turned the whole economy around on a dime. You had the big auto manufacturers switching from civilian car manufacturing to turning out planes, amphibious landing craft, tanks, all the rest of it in a month. And that was before digital technologies and just-in-time production. If we wanted to, within a democracy, within the constraints of our current economy, we could turn the whole thing round immediately. What's lacking is not dictatorship or shooting people in the head or all the things which you seem to think are lacking.
I didn't say they were lacking, George. Don't be naughty now, because I'll have to pull you up on that.
But George, you mentioned, obviously China is one extreme, and then you've got the States as another one, which is similar to us in that people just don't want to talk about it. They find it very boring. And I think it was an article you read where you said that the American networks, the TV networks, talked about climate change for a total of 4 hours across the whole year. And I think we as sort of journalists or radio people, we know that actually most people find it quite a turn-off talking about this subject because you're either a denier or you're on your side of the fence. But there's a huge number of people in the middle who just do a general shrug about it. How do you get over that?
Yeah, well, the media has been completely useless. I mean, it's not just that they've scarcely been covering it at all, but when they do so badly that indeed it does turn people off. There are all sorts of really powerful stories to be told, not just about what's happening, but also about the initiatives which people are doing to try to get out of this mess. Really exciting new ways of generating energy, new technologies, the incredibly powerful campaigns of the kind we're seeing, for example, in the Hanbacher forest in Germany, where these amazingly brave young people, one of whom has already died, sitting in the trees, trying to defend this forest against attempts to dig the whole thing up for an open-cast lignite mine, lignite being the dirtiest form of coal of all. Now, if that's not a good story and a big story, I don't know what is. But where's the media? Do we hear about this on the British media? We don't.
Well, George, because the media's not part of the problem at all. The problem is people get fatigued at listening to warnings all the time, which turn out not to be true. And in the end, whether it's because we're not. Hang on, well,
they're not. If the warnings have been wrong, it's because they've actually haven't been severe enough.
Well, no, my point, George, is this.
Which we were expecting to face in 2050.
No, but my point is that the climate change lobby has kind of kiboshed itself by continually making predictions, which may or may not have come true. But the point is, it's not. I'm not talking about the incidents.
We've been making predictions which have already come true.
Well, you're saying
kiboshing ourselves by making true predictions.
Well, if you'd let me finish, you might be able to understand my point. My point is that actually people can't see very far into the future. People don't know what's going to happen in 2050, right? They can't even envisage what that will look like. They can't even imagine what 5 years down the road is going to look like. They don't even know what kind of car they're going to drive. And most people, generally speaking, are not fanatics, okay? They need to be persuaded gently. And unfortunately, the people who are trying to persuade them are not persuading them gently enough. So you've got it all wrong. And you don't have to be a genius to work that out.
Right. Now, listen, Mike, we in the environment movement have absolutely racked our brains about this. What is the best way of talking about this? Do we go in harder? Do we go in softer? Should we be more pro-business? Should we be more anti-business? Should we emphasise this, emphasise that? And do you know what we discovered? There is no right way of talking about it because a lot of people simply don't want to hear. People are resistant to change. We succumb to this thing called system justification, where we just basically justify whatever the system happens to be. And of course, people say, oh, they want to take something away from us. Well, obviously there are certain bad things we can't do anymore.
People don't like being told how to live their lives, George, because we live in a modern democracy where you're not supposed to have to do that.
Well, listen, we in the environment movement are in no position to tell people anything. We're in a position to argue and to advocate, which is what I'm doing right now. But I'm not a political leader. I can't boss people around. I can just say this is the way we ought to live. And the media.
But what gives you the right to say that, George? What gives you the right to tell anybody else how they ought to live?
Sorry. What said anyone shouldn't have that right? Are you saying that we should ask free speech?
I don't have an overarching need to tell other people what to do, okay? I believe that people...
Are you saying I don't have the right? Are you saying I don't have the right to say what changes should be made?
No, I don't think you have the right to tell people... No, hang on.
You are fundamentally anti-democratic.
No, I'm telling you that you don't have the right to tell other people how to live. No, that's not a right. If you want to do it, you'll have to take the consequences of not bloody listening to you.
Yeah, listen. As I said, all I'm doing is saying this is what we need to do.
Yeah, but why should we believe you, though?
Well, that's your choice.
I mean, there used to be a guy that walked up and down Oxford Street wearing a billboard that said "The end is nigh." I didn't listen to him either.
But Mike, why is it any different?
If you believe that anyone who's saying, "Look, this is the way we're heading," is comparable to some bloke with a sandwich board outside Oxford Street.
Well, it's got the same effect.
Then that reflects on you, mate, not on me.
Well, it doesn't reflect on me, mate.
In fact, it suggests, Mike, that you just dismiss anyone who says we need a better way of living.
No, I'm not saying that. I just don't like being told what to do, George, and I'd like to know what
I'm not
people...
telling you what to do. We've been through that.
Well, you're telling me what I ought to do, which is the same thing.
Yes, exactly. I am telling...
But I don't believe you have... I don't believe you have that superior right to tell me because your way of living is better than mine.
Including look, I tell myself what to do. We're trying to change the world here, and if we can't advocate,
no, you are
democracy. Listen, Mike. If we can't advocate in a democracy for a better way of living, then democracy means nothing. And if you are saying that people like me should not speak out,
that's not what I said.
Profoundly anti-democratic.
That's not what I said. I never said that.
You do not understand the basis of free speech.
I never said that. I've just had you on my radio show for 20 minutes. I think that's hardly shutting you down, George, is it? You know, I mean, I'm not saying you haven't. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying that you don't have the right to do it.
Having heard me, you see, this is where your contradiction arises.
It's not a contradiction. I'm ultimately a very democratic person.
Let me finish. You've given me 20 minutes to talk about it, and then you said you've got no right to talk about it.
I didn't say you have no right to talk about it. I said,
yes, That's exactly
that's not what I said. Well, then how can you be... Well, how can you make that argument?
You've just been telling us.
How can you make the argument?
You've got no right to tell us the things that I've just spent 20 minutes telling you.
I didn't say that. I thought you were a bright guy, George. You surely can understand the difference. You surely can understand the difference. No, I said you don't have the right to tell people how they ought to live. That's not the same as me saying you can't say it.
Yeah, and you've just given me 20 minutes to tell people how they ought to live.
No.
Anyway,
I'm taking your view, George.
You can go off and sort out your own contradictions, but if you want to carry on talking about climate change, we can do that.
OK, well, I think I'll let you go, George. Thanks very much indeed for the offer. George Monbiot, who is a fundamentally undemocratic person, clearly, because he doesn't believe that other people have a view which is different to his, which is just as valid.